So welcome back to the GenAIOps Podcast. I'm Toby, the host, alongside Jamie. So today we're joined by Simon Chan, who is the Managing Director of Technology Business Partners, and Stuart Winter-Tare, who is the Chief Product Officer and Partner, alongside myself at Artemis. So over to you guys, if you want to just give a little bit of an introduction around what you do, and then we can go from there with some interesting questions.
Simon, you go first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Chan, Managing Partner at Technology Business Partners. And so what we do, we're a technology consulting firm. We specialize around integrations around ERP systems. So obviously in that line of work, we do get a lot of conversations around data and then these days, artificial intelligence as well. So that's me.
So I'm Stuart Winter-Tare, Chief Product Officer and Partner at Artemis Ventures. And yes, dealing with a lot of AI in companies at the moment. If you want to know more about me, I write prolifically on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Okay, so the first thing over the next six or seven podcasts that we're going to do is we're going to touch on some of our manifesto points that we have as part of the Centre for GenAIOps. Stuart and Simon are both ambassadors alongside myself and Jamie. So Jamie, what's the first point of discussion?
Yeah, so starting off, I thought we could open on point number one, which is we foster an inclusive culture of open collaboration and trust by creating environments where diverse teams collaborate openly, ensuring that trust is built at every stage of generative AI development and operation. So, Stuart or Simon, which one of you would like to, give your take on the importance of this principle in the manifesto?
So I'll start. Why does culture matter in general? I think it's really important to build an open, inclusive culture, and especially in the area of artificial intelligence, where we're kind of building the knowledge systems of the future here, especially with the large language models. So I think in terms of fostering that kind of diversity, openness, it's so important to get views from lots of different areas, from cultures, teams, countries even, to build a model that's going to kind of cater for the knowledge needs of everyone. And I think with a lot of these systems, we're building global systems as well. And so the openness adds to that. I think you need to build a culture of trust as well. And so it's really important to have the diverse viewpoints of everyone to feed into that. And I think the alternative to that is a closed culture. And with that, obviously, you're going to have trouble with getting the kind of knowledge base, the diversity of knowledge base that's going to be useful for people. But it's also going to be really difficult to actually control what's in there as well, in terms of if it's closed, it just means it's a lot more difficult to actually focus on the outcomes that come out of that conversation.
And have you seen a bit of a big kind of culture shift in the organizations you're working in? I mean, so most of the ones that we look at, actually they're very aware of AI. And certainly in the lower levels of the company, they are starting to explore it, but they're certainly not at a level where they would be able to have informed discussions internally around what the sort of things they should be using are. What have you seen in your side of the industry in relation to that?
So in terms of the consulting side, there's been quite a diverse range of uses so far. So I think the most obvious one is the meetings, So it's around transcription of meetings mainly, but also around insights around what's talked about within the meetings. So you've got summaries, you've got playbacks, etc. I think that's really helping to supercharge a lot of the documentation that used to happen around kind of consulting engagements. So that's I think that the main call out really around that. That's where we use a lot of AI at the moment. And I think also in terms of the LLMs as well, there's a lot around basically answering questions, generating content. So in consulting, we have things that we need to do around putting bids together, research around particular companies, for example, for RFPs. And so it's at the moment, we're finding the LLMs are a great source for that, and it's accelerating things to the next level in terms of, in the past we've been very used to using Google and search engines for that research. With LLMs, we're kind of, really short-circuiting that and getting to the content really, really quickly. And what I'm finding is with them, in terms of if you know how to ask the right questions, the outputs from LLMs can be absolutely kind of game-changing. Yeah. If you combine different narratives together and actually ask questions from different viewpoints. But it's all about the prompt. So it's really important to have those prompts.
Okay, interesting. And Stuart, have you seen... do you think there's been an exponential growth in terms of the rate at which companies are adopting AI? AI has been around for, certainly in industry, most people have been thinking about it for, at least the last 5 years. Do you think now companies are adopting it quicker and more rapidly than they were maybe 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dilemma at the moment because we know that 80% of companies are stuck in generative AI POC hell. And there's many, many reasons for that we could cover. But your question about the general AI in terms of sort of traditional machine learning, as we have to call it now, that's still delivering tremendous value and has been for many, many years. So we know that there's a problem, and we can actually tackle it from this issue of trust, because that was raised first. So, that trust comes in and goes out in many respects. Do we trust the technology of generative AI? That's declining. The trust of the outputs is declining, but we have a paradox because usage is skyrocketing and validation of the output is also declining. We've never seen this kind of technological adoption before. Normally, trust precedes adoption. This time, it's replacing it. There are many, many reasons for that, but it's very, very interesting. I think a lot of the POC hell comes from a disconnect with the business, and this is another trust aspect. So, is the business and these POCs and the teams, firstly, are they safe to fail? Okay, that's another trust issue. Do they have psychological safety or not? And ultimately, does the business trust them? Means, are they tied to the business, tied to what keeps the executives up at night? And I think that's slightly failing at the moment. And that's, again, another long-standing problem that needs to be solved. MIT and McKinsey suggested a new role of the translator and connector to connect these teams together with the business. Personally, obviously, I'm a product person. That should, in my opinion, that should be a product role. But yes, so, just to answer, yes, we're seeing a lot of activity. We're seeing a lot of plans. But at the moment, we're not seeing the return on investment, and we're seeing a lot of what they call in POC hell. That stage will not last long as they start to sort of get themselves together, get the data together, start to connect it with business goals and drivers. We will start to see real revenue then, I believe.
Okay, fascinating. So it sounds as if really what the industry needs then is a bigger drive from industry to help from industry in the sense of the customers and the users of this AI to really help drive validation and trust themselves to improve the output for the providers of this AI.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it out loud, really. The business wants quick wins. We need to get buy-in, and there isn't that getting the buy-in. In terms of trust, as I say, we're in a paradox at the moment with that. But yeah, I'm sure Simon has comments on this too.
I think in terms of the, as you say, getting trust from the business, that's always on a digital transformation initiative, whether it's AI, whether it's data, whether it's ERP, whether it's CRM. It's all about that kind of initial customer buy-in, and that always starts with a shared vision about what you want to achieve. Yeah. I think a lot of companies at the moment are going straight in saying we need AI and not thinking about the solution or the problem they're trying to solve. Yeah. So they're going straight to the solution, not looking at the problem that they're trying to solve. And I think that's the mistake. And this is probably where you're seeing this POC hell happening, because people are just triangulating around the idea that AI needs to be in the business somehow, but they don't know where it fits in. And so we've seen a lot of that sort of thing in the past in kind of our work in digital transformation. It used to be, we need digital transformation, but we don't really know where we need it. And I think the same thing's happening with AI today.
Okay, interesting.
If it's okay, Toby, I'd love to pick up on a couple of Simon's points there, because he absolutely nails it. This transformation, first I'll start with that. I think companies are tired of 3 to 5 year massive transformation plans that simply fail. That talks directly to what I was saying, which is they want some quick wins so they can get some buy-in from the board and make everybody feel safer. But the thing that Simon nailed there was, let's have AI. We want AI, and this is the thing that I talk about so much, which is, if you focus on technology, you end with more technology. If you focus on the customer and business, you end up with more customers and business. We're always putting the cart before the horse, and it's worse this time because generative AI has that wow factor, and researchers love to do the cutting edge thing. They're academics, of course they do, and so do product people. And so what we end up doing is we end up building technology that's in search of problems to solve. I was in the car with my wife, and she asked me, why is there so much technology in search of problems to solve? And it's exactly what Simon said, not enough time in the problem space. And I said to my wife, the problem is not the problem, that's the problem. And she understood what I meant. What I meant by that was that we're not going for the pain points. We're not going for the problem. We don't know what the problem is. What's the problem under the problem? What's the context of the problem? Is the problem worth solving? Is the problem real? Is there another way of viewing this? And we must start with that. So I just wanted to say that Simon nailed that, and I'm in complete agreement.
Okay, interesting.
Thank you, Stuart. I think that one way you can kind of engage the business in terms of trying to unearth the problem is really trying to get them in the conversation of what they're trying to do to grow their business, or to save costs. If you start nailing the conversations around kind of how do you want to influence your KPIs, in your business, how do you want to improve your business, then you can start to get to those ideas of problems to solve. And this is what a lot of kind of strategy consulting firms do. They come in, they have frameworks for actually generating ideas, around this stuff. And then once you brainstorm these ideas, you can then start looking at identifying where there is a problem in your organization that you can actually use technology to resolve.
Okay. What's the next? What's the other manifesto point we need to go over today? Number 6, right?
Next one is number 6. We design with transparency and act with integrity by building explainable systems that enable organizations to uphold their own standards of integrity and foster trust among stakeholders. So, Stuart, I know that you recently posted a research paper on explainable AI. It's got a lot of sort of, I suppose, traction in terms of becoming a core product principle of AI applications in helping to build that trust. But I'm interested to hear your take on explainable AI and what that research paper that you posted also explained.
From a product perspective, I assumed that the more explanation, the more explainable it was to the user, the trust would rise. I was completely wrong. It doesn't work like that, and that shocked me. This is a different paper I'm talking about, and there's been several of them. In fact, it decreases trust because it actually surfaces the fallibility of the model, and they lose trust in it. So it's, even if we try to educate them about this, they're likely to still not read these things and see these signs, and they're always disappointed when they fail. That's something from my sort of product experience. From the explainable, we have another problem, because regulation is coming out faster than people are sort of experiencing the technology, especially in Europe. Okay, so in Europe, there is a lot of emphasis on being able to track how the models made a decision through explainability. Wonderful, we think. And OpenAI puts out a paper to say all we need to do is monitor the chain of thought in the reasoning process. Boom, we've got explainability. That was proved utterly nonsense 1 day later, because these models don't think, as they claim to. They do sort of like a post hoc reasoning. So they actually say, I added 1 to 1 to get 2, but actually the process that they went through was vastly different, very long and complex and weird. But when they explain how they got there, it's the logical steps that we all know. Now that's going to cause a regulatory problem. So the only other thing is we cannot put these into anything that makes decisions for people that are significant, because we cannot rely on these models to be explainable. So there's an awful lot of work going on to try to rectify this situation and to try to find if we can make these truly, explainable. I have my doubts if that will ever be achieved, a bit like confabulations or hallucinations. They're always going to exist, even if it's in the periphery, and we find ways to mitigate them, which is happening, and that's fine. But in terms of chaining models together, especially chaining reasoning models together to make a decision whether Toby's going to get credit that is requested, at this point we're not going to be able to track how it truly made that decision. So we're in a sticky place.
Yeah, definitely. I think the transparency there and explainability is going to be a big sticking point for a lot of people, because unless you are really deep in the tech, you're not going to be able to explain it. And I think that puts off a lot of conventional businesses from going down that route, because it's just it would be, they'd need entire new teams to be put together and to really add to the complexity there. And that's just something that they're never going to do. Not never, but yeah, you're right. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of core nature of LLMs is that they are unpredictable, and will we ever get to a point, as you mentioned, Stuart, where we can actually get their true reasoning, essentially? How do you sort of see this playing out? And is there anything organizations can do you think, with explainability, in terms of, I suppose, improving what the models do think their sort of decision-making process is?
Number one consideration is, what are you using this for? If you're using this for critical decisions that have impact on people's lives, then and regulation demands that it needs to be truly explainable, whatever that may mean, then you need to watch out. And perhaps this isn't the right technology for that use case. Less important things, whatever they may be, may not come under that regulatory sort of strictness. So you just have to be very, very careful there. And as I say, I am confident that ways will be found to mitigate this to a degree. Okay. But for the moment, and I still, even though from my own experience of building large language model products, I tried to put a lot of explainability from the model in the outputs. I tried to do a lot of explanation in the UX, to set the expectations and educate the users. None of it worked. It was very, very surprising to me, but it shouldn't have been. Perhaps I don't read all of the details of everything, and so there was still, even though we would say this model is, only 99%, 90%, sort of accurate, there was still a big disappointment when the models did something that was evidently wrong. So I'm not sure how we overcome that. Maybe it will just be a matter of time and experience for people using this technology.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like it's almost as much on the educational part of the user and getting them to explain it, because some of the things we find a lot with our customers is that when they are essentially have had an output which isn't as they expect. And although similar to you, Stuart, we've implemented lots of things on the UX side to try and explain that. It still doesn't necessarily. I suppose they're still getting used to the sort of nature of the technology and understanding. So, from my perspective, I do think that's just something potentially as we do see usage increase, people get more used to it throughout organizations and just generally, then hopefully that will be something which sort of just becomes the norm, I suppose, in terms of just accepting that we don't know with 100% certainty how the models have arrived at this specific outcome in all cases. Simon, do you have any thoughts on any of those the sort of points Stuart discussed?
I think the point that comes to mind is that these are kind of being treated as expert systems at the moment. And I'm not sure we should frame them as that as yet, because they're still very early in their evolution. Yeah. And I kind of studied expert systems like many years ago at university. So I kind of got the background around that, around expert systems and NLP essentially. And this is just an extrapolation of that. We kind of moved on. We kind of got better at doing it. And we've got something that looks like a human now replying to you. Yeah, chatbot. Everybody's getting really excited about it. But I think they need to be cautious. And the reason why is I think anyone who's got pretty good command of a knowledge area will attest to this. If you start asking questions about your knowledge area, it will get things wrong every now and again. You will see stuff that doesn't really tie up, and you will have to refactor your question to get to the right answer. So this thing is still learning. These things are still learning. So it's really important not to treat these systems as experts, but to treat them as, I guess, references at this point. Yeah. And to use them as references rather than the truth, which I think is where a lot of people are in danger of kind of going down that route.
Mm. Yeah, you bring up a very good point there. I mean, we've been in the deterministic rules-based area in the digital world for the last 30 years. All of a sudden, we've moved to the world of probabilities, and you can't blame people for sort of being surprised when the technology does something odd. Also, Simon brought up a good point there about experts. It's really funny because if you don't have expertise in a specific domain and you use a large language model, it is mind-blowing. I'll give you an example. I am a terrible coder. I really tried all my life. I know I'm rubbish at it. But when I wanted to do something, I went to Cursor. I felt like I had superpowers. It was unbelievable what I could make, right? But the thing is, I don't have enough domain knowledge to know if that code is good, scalable, secure, all the rest of it. That's the problem. So, that urge to jump on LinkedIn and, declare the death of the engineering industry, I can see why people do that, because they don't have that domain knowledge. The irony is this technology is the most powerful in the hands of those that have that domain knowledge, because it gets them kind of 80% of the way there. And sometimes it surfaces things that they hadn't thought of. I'm talking from experience here, but you can see all the flaws in the output and you know what you have to get rid of, what you have to change, but it is enormously empowering nevertheless. But yeah, it's always going to look like magic to the person that hasn't got that domain expertise.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, really, to see these tools now in the hands of everyone who's got a phone. It's crazy if you think about it. And it's like, as Stuart says, I think they're an excellent reference, and they kind of enhance the skills of someone who's already a domain expert, absolutely, which is great. They also, on the cautionary side, allow you to appear as an expert when you perhaps aren't an expert. And I think this is the area of content creation that we got to start looking at. So the most obvious one is kind of taking a photograph, yeah, or AI generating a photograph, viewing a situation that kind of suits your needs, for example. Another one is coming up with a content piece. You could write about something that you have absolutely no knowledge of and appear as an expert online at the moment. So that's something we need to look into, and something we need to find ways of controlling, yeah, just so that we filter these out, these kind of false sources out. I think that's something, as an industry, as a, kind of community, we need to start looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the market will sort of determine the value of these content pieces and these, people that do really have the expertise and know what they're speaking about, as opposed to those that essentially are just prompting their way to content and don't necessarily have a good idea of what they're speaking about, which I suppose is one of the key purposes of the Centre for GenAIOps, is essentially cutting through the noise. Anyone can sort of post on LinkedIn about how to build a GenAI application or all of the benefits of this wonderful technology. However, I think we're all aligned in thinking that we're here to try and cut through that noise and bring a sense of credibility and trust to actually how you can build applications and use this technology to actually create a real world impact. So yeah, I 100% agree. And just from, my we will see just a flooding of content. I think we already are, to be honest. I think the amount of information they say that the average human consumes on a weekly basis is in like 80 hours or so, which is almost all of their waking time. And I can imagine with AI, then that's just going to continue to go through. And I even reckon that there potentially may be AI to combat the sort of AI to almost sieve through that content automatically for you and pull back some of the specific pieces which are more relevant to you and that you've potentially validated in the past. So that's potentially a business idea in the future.
I think it's up to the community to come up with these algorithms as well to kind of develop trust, and to filter out kind of false information. It's I think as a group we have a responsibility to do that. As kind of custodians of the technology, I think it's really important that we all get together to define these rules and ethics around how the tech is used.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we decided to start this podcast for the Centre for GenAIOps, right? Is it's our role as ambassadors to ensure that we can help industry and people who want to explore this sort of stuff, as much as possible in the adoption in the right way and to follow the best practices more than anything else. So yeah, okay, fascinating. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today, folks. But Stuart, Simon, thank you so much for giving up your day and talking with us. And hopefully we might have you back on in a future episode.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Brilliant.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.